AOC finally responded proudly concerning a high school yearbook photo that proves she grew up in a wealthy suburb. She said, "See, I told you I went to high school."
And I can tell you, I know that when I was waitressing and struggling to put food on the table, for a while there, I did. I tried to stop caring. I tried to just keep my head down, work my shifts, and accept that this is just how things are. But that is no way to live, Arizona. It's no way to live. What I do know is that we don't have to live like this. And in fact, we cannot live like this anymore.
This is ridiculous.
Greg Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly didn't just challenge AOC's political stage show, they practically burned the tent to ashes. With razor-sharp humor and ruthless accuracy, they called out her grandstanding, her viral virtue signaling, and all the empty theatrics behind her persona. From TikTok meltdowns to economic daydreams, nothing was spared. This wasn't just a roast, it was a public dismantling of a brand built on hashtags alone. Anyone expecting a clever comeback from AOC was disappointed. She was left exposed and speechless.
Sense from like AOC that he should be impeached is just absurd. Absurd. There's no... Okay, get back to me when you've read the Constitution or get a law degree, because you sound like an... There is absolutely no ground to impeach the president. He 100% was within his constitutional authority and his congressionally authorized authority to do what he did.
AOC. What? She's kind of fun in a silly but earnest, wrong but adorable way. She's like your daughter when she comes back from her first year at Brown, full of half-baked, half opinions, in need of some gentle, patient deprogramming. But people have to realize new faces doesn't mean new ideas. Drives me crazy. AOC has never introduced a fresh idea or issue in her life.
Greg Gutfeld barely had to get warmed up before tearing into Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The moment her name came up, it was like someone hit a giant red comedy button for him. Gutfeld lit up as if he'd been handed a script labeled unlimited material. For him, AOC wasn't just a congresswoman, she was a walking, talking sketch comedy routine who somehow got elected and forgot to turn off the laugh track.
Like an 80-year-old leftist in a used bookstore. I mean, she may look fresh, but she's as stale as an abandoned futon on the street. It's like, I listen to her, I go, I heard that at Berkeley in 1983. So their problem is, and the reason why they don't have any ideas is they operate on half opinions.
He started by marveling at AOC's uncanny gift for treating every Instagram Live like a mini State of the Union address for ring lights and household pets. Gutfeld joked that AOC could be surrounded by actual experts and still walk away with a fresh batch of poorly digested buzzwords. Her opinions, he said, were like microwaved leftovers from a college activism rally, reheated just enough to smell political, but never quite safe to consume.
So by now you heard that AOC, among others, were arrested last night. She truly is an American hero. It was brutal, taken out in cuffs. Well, technically, her shirt had cuffs. Maybe French cuffs, as she did surrender.
Greg ripped into her love of drama, mocking how she treated every Capitol Hill corridor like a runway and every disagreement like a meltdown caught on camera. He claimed she approached lawmaking the same way a reality show contestant handles a group challenge, loud, confused, and convinced. She's the hero even when the kitchen's on fire.
That's a debate we should be having. And look, if we could get congressional approval of the specific action, fine, I'm okay with that too. If you want to bring it to Congress, go ahead and see how that goes. I don't think it's necessary, but...
Then came the policy takedown. Gutfeld gleefully shredded her biggest proposals, describing them as somewhere between utopian fantasy and economic sabotage. He joked the Green New Deal rib like a 7th grader's science fair project slapped. Together the night before, covered in glitter and missing any real math. He compared her legislation to IKEA furniture assembled without instructions, only to blame the chair when it collapsed.
Oh, let's do it. What happens? You have repeat criminals wreaking havoc. What if we have sanctuary cities? Hey, let's do it. What happens? Finding sanctuary, safe haven. What if we give trans rights? you just ruin women's sports, you ruin safe spaces, you make kids' lives hell, but...
He also had a field day mocking her nonstop social media hustle. Greg said AOC made more videos than a full-time influencer, except she seemed immune to facts. He imagined her staff meetings as a chaotic mix of filters, slogans, and someone yelling about carbon emissions while snapping selfies in an SUV, and the tears he couldn't resist mocking those. According to Gutfeld, every vote she didn't like turned into a Shakespearean tragedy, complete with dramatic pauses and shaky voice. If she didn't get her way, it wasn't just a policy dispute, it was the fall of Rome with better lighting. Meanwhile, Megyn Kelly took her turn with a scalpel instead of a flamethrower. Where Gutfeld brought the heat, Megyn brought icy precision. She calmly dismantled AOC layer by layer, describing how she delivered half-digested talking points with the confidence of someone who skimmed a Wikipedia page and mistook it for a PhD. Megyn argued that AOC's speeches packed more emotion than intellectual structure, like a motivational poster that somehow got elected to Congress.
Beautiful little town called Yorktown Heights in Westchester. It's not the fanciest of Westchester towns, but it ain't the Bronx by any measure. And the reason this is relevant is because a congresswoman who you may know as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been telling us for years that she is from the Bronx. And recently she had a fight with President Trump over tweet, text, truth, whatever. And she played tough and said, "Oh, don't you mess with me. I'm a Bronx girl, and we eat Queens boys for breakfast."
Kelly mocked AOC's habit of swapping moral outrage for hard data, pointing out that she saw any disagreement not as a difference of opinion, but as proof of someone's villainy. According to Megyn, the world doesn't run on good guys versus bad guys, but AOC never seemed to catch that memo, probably too busy staging another protest in her own office when it came to performance politics. Kelly said AOC didn't legislate, she live-streamed. She didn't debate, she performed. Kelly painted her as someone who arrived in Congress with a script, a spotlight, and no plan beyond racking up likes. She called out how AOC transformed press conferences into audition reels for a dramatic role that exists only in her head. Kelly also roasted the climate grandstanding, wondering how someone so obsessed with saving the planet could rack up more air miles than a touring DJ. She argued AOC's climate messaging had the depth of a bumper sticker and the consistency of a crayon-scrawled weather report. Kelly described how AOC made every headline her own personal crusade, treating each opposing view as a dire threat. To Megyn, AOC turned public policy into an endless open mic night of social justice, slam poetry with every line more exaggerated than the last.
But if her pants had cuffs, she would have pretended to be in leg irons too. But real handcuffs, not so much. But that didn't stop her from pretending, and I hate it when people do this to me. When I ask people to put on handcuffs and they say, "I'll just pretend I have them on," I'd be like, "Sure, and I'll pretend to pay you out."
Kelly mocked AOC's habit of swapping moral outrage for hard data, pointing out that she saw any disagreement not as a difference of opinion, but as proof of someone's villainy. According to Megyn, the world doesn't run on good guys versus bad guys, but AOC never seemed to catch that memo, probably too busy staging another protest in her own office when it came to performance politics. Kelly said AOC didn't legislate, she live-streamed. She didn't debate, she performed. Kelly painted her as someone who arrived in Congress with a script, a spotlight, and no plan beyond racking up likes. She called out how AOC transformed press conferences into audition reels for a dramatic role that exists only in her head. Kelly also roasted the climate grandstanding, wondering how someone so obsessed with saving the planet could rack up more air miles than a touring DJ. She argued AOC's climate messaging had the depth of a bumper sticker and the consistency of a crayon-scrawled weather report. Kelly described how AOC made every headline her own personal crusade, treating each opposing view as a dire threat. To Megyn, AOC turned public policy into an endless open mic night of social justice, slam poetry with every line more exaggerated than the last.
Respectfully, AOC. Well, that's real cute, except she only lived in the Bronx until she was age 5, when at best you're in usually kindergarten, maybe first grade. And she spent the rest of her childhood, 1 through 12th grade, in Yorktown Heights, which is Westchester. And by any measure, it is richer, nicer, and more white collar than the Bronx, with all due respect to my friends in the Bronx.
He argued AOC tried to play Robin Hood in designer heels, stealing attention from real problems while giving speeches that sounded like tweets run through a thesaurus. Meanwhile, Megyn returned to exposing her contradictions, preaching empowerment, while claiming constant victimhood, demanding accountability, while ducking it, insisting on transparency, while dodging interviews unless they came with pre-approved questions. Kelly claimed AOC had perfected the art of toggling between revolutionary and victim depending on which camera angle worked better. She called out AOC's tendency to shrink complicated policy debates down to viral one-liners, treating anyone asking for details as an enemy of progress. She noted how AOC treated capitalism like it was Voldemort and dodged economic questions by blaming billionaires rather than doing arithmetic. Kelly highlighted how she built movements with zero planning and staged revolutions with no logistics. Politics, she argued, was just another campus club for OSA, all slogans, big promises, and no follow-through once the pizza ran out.
AOC was mocked on social media for imitating being handcuffed, which is a change from her usually being mocked for imitating a congresswoman. That's not even close to being as disgusting as I can be. She, in fact, was gingerly escorted away to a holding area where she kept up the phony display before finally raising her fist to supporters. She then crossed her wrists behind her back, again in the faux handcuffed position. It's as tall a tale as AOC nearly being killed on
Gutfeld returned swinging, dubbing AOC the queen of delayed memories. He joked she had a habit of suddenly remembering trauma only after it started trending. He mocked those convenient flashbacks that lined up perfectly with new legislation or media headlines. Greg said if there were a prize for best improv drama in politics, AOC would win and thank herself in the acceptance speech. He also roasted her foreign policy takes, which he summarized as feel bad, blame America, demand change, propose nothing. Greg imagined her trying to resolve global crises with motivational quotes and vegan recipes. Back to Megyn, who examined how AOC transitioned from activist to establishment darling while refusing to admit she'd changed. She argued AOC wanted the perks of rebellion with the privileges of power, all while pretending she stood outside the system she campaigned to join. According to Kelly, that was like crashing a party and then complaining about the playlist you picked yourself.
Now some of her schoolmates, separate and apart from Benny, are weighing in on her claims. I'll get to the Benny thing in one second, but there was a piece in the New York Post talking about how she's embarrassing herself. She's embarrassing herself now with this Bronx girl.
Kelly mocked the staged photo ops, the curated outrage, and the endless controversies, each capped off with a teary video and a fundraising link. She said AOC had turned the work of Congress into a serialized drama starring herself as the misunderstood heroine, bravely standing up to reality. Both Gutfeld and Kelly agreed on one point: AOC wasn't an accident. She was a brand carefully wrapped in authenticity, marketed as a revolution and powered by Wi-Fi. They didn't see her as dangerous, just predictable. A script with wardrobe changes, protest props, and designer boots. Greg joked that if you gave AOC a week to write a bill, she'd come back with a spoken word poem and a Spotify playlist. According to him, OC didn't represent the future of politics, she represented the moment. Politics swiped left on substance. Kelly closed her segment by predicting that AOC's biggest threat wasn't political opposition, it was time. Eventually, slogans fade, hashtags disappear, and voters start demanding results. When that day comes, she argued, OC would realize that likes don't pass laws, retweets don't build infrastructure, and no amount of on-camera tears can replace real work.
AOC was on 60 Minutes last night. Quite a feat for a newcomer. Must be all her great new ideas.
People are going to have to start paying their fair share in taxes. Once you get to like the tippy tops, on your $10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%.
Anderson's like,
What an expression. Now, the real story isn't AOC's very old ideas. It's the media's gushy view of her. Even with her old ideas, she gets...
But they both left the door open because this wasn't the final act. AOC was still performing, still gathering applause from people who never read the script. As long as she kept talking, Gutfeld and Kelly would stay ready with fresh jokes, coffee in hand, waiting for the next episode. Gutfeld jumped back and saying AOC's greatest achievement so far was turning every policy debate into a performance piece. She didn't just miss the point. She showed up with costumes, props, and a monologue guaranteed to win claps from people who weren't listening closely, according to Greg. AOC could transform a pothole complaint into a national referendum on privilege, feelings, and oppression.
Check in on AOC and see what she has to say.
Any quick reaction on what's going on with Elon Musk and President Trump on Twitter right now?
Oh man, the girls are fighting, aren't they?
I think this breakup we've been seeing a long time coming, but we'll see what the impacts are of it legislatively.
Okay. You're so cool referring to them as the girls. She's above it all, Ben. That's what she's trying to telegraph. You see, she's the adult in the room, the one out there who does a preacher accent, and she leans into her fake Latina accent. And she's the adult.
He especially targeted her leadership, saying that whenever there was a real crisis, OC arrived late, underprepared, and ready to dramatize everything. He compared her to a firefighter showing up to a house fire with a scented candle and a vlog. Camera more interested in narrating the drama than putting out the flames. Her followers, he added, ate it up like political popcorn. Megyn Kelly returned for one last jab, mocking how AOC moralizes every issue while ignoring practical solutions. She compared her to someone who'd shame you for using a plastic straw while flying private to a speaking gig. Kelly highlighted her selective outrage and fixation on viral trends while ignoring the gritty, unglamorous work of governing. Kelly ended with a smirk, suggesting AOC's worst nightmare wasn't being wrong, it was being irrelevant. Because in her world, silence wasn't reflection, it was defeat. And as long as there were cameras rolling and outrage to manufacture, AOC would keep talking whether or not anyone was still listening. He especially targeted her leadership, saying that whenever there was a real crisis, AOC arrived late, underprepared, and ready to dramatize everything. He compared her to a firefighter showing up to a house fire with a scented candle and a vlog camera, more interested in narrating the drama than putting out the flames. Her followers, he added, ate it up like political popcorn. Megyn Kelly returned for one last jab, mocking how AOC moralizes every issue while ignoring practical solutions. She compared her to someone who'd shame you for using a plastic straw while flying private to a speaking gig. Kelly highlighted her selective outrage and fixation on viral trends, while ignoring the gritty, unglamorous work of governing. Kelly ended with a smirk, suggesting AOC's worst nightmare wasn't being wrong, it was being irrelevant. Because in her world, silence wasn't reflection, it was defeat. And as long as there were cameras rolling and outrage to manufacture, AOC would keep talking whether or not anyone was still listening.